Thank you for joining me today. I am Penny Eccles, founder of Marketing Partnership. If you don't know me, I was formerly marketing director at Nottingham Trent, but for the last 4 years have been working with over 35 institutions in the UK and beyond in helping them to grow their student numbers. We're a small team, but we have a really strong track record of success. We offer a range of individual workshops, but our two signature products are number one, our PACE program, which is for marketing and student recruitment teams who really want to supercharge what they do. It's a 12-month program, but absolutely works. And number two, working with academic schools and faculties, we run a stealing strategy product where they can look and do the deep dive on what they offer and their proposition to start to acquire market share from their competitors. Again, a very successful product with lots of case studies now. So today I'm going to give you a kind of sample of what you would expect if you were working with us, whilst also hopefully giving you a good action list at the end of the session. If you do want to work with us or you just want to have a chat, Gemma has just added in my calendar. There are limited spaces, but free 20-minute chat, no obligation. Please do take that up, and I'd really look forward to talking to you. So as I said earlier, there'll be some questions at the end. So if you do have questions, please do add them either in the Q&A or in the chat. Okay, so 5 reasons why you're not attracting enough students to your institution. Obviously, a very sensational title, but we know now some of the common pitfalls that can occur at institutions, and hopefully this will set you in the right track for 2025 recruitment. Okay, so first question, is anybody watching Saturday night telly, Gladiators, or am I the saddest one here? It's easy family television, although I do have to say, I do think I prefer the retro Gladiators, Jet, Hunter, Wolf, Ulrika. Not so sure about the Walshes, but you can convince me otherwise. But there's one game in Gladiators that reminds me of being an HE marketer, and it is this, the Gauntlet. If you've seen the program, you'll know what I mean. So it is a 45-foot long open tunnel with 5 separate points where a gladiator stands with their ramrods and their pugil sticks, and the poor old contender has to make their way from one end of the tunnel to the other, fighting these gladiators. Now, that's your typical HE marketer, I think. And yes, we have all sorts of things chucked at us in terms of changing policies, government sentiment towards universities, changing goalposts, demographics, you name it. However, sometimes I wonder if we're trying to battle through that tunnel against our own internal gladiators, and that we're not really putting the foundations in place to make sure that we're not inadvertently causing ourselves plenty of problems in pursuing our student growth goals. So this is what we'll be focusing on. How do you fight your own gladiators? And how do you start 2025 with a really strong, robust lead pool that will take you through and hopefully minimize your reliance on clearing, or you use clearing just as your lovely top up rather than something that is an absolute necessity for the university. So here are my 5 reasons why you might not be attracting enough students. Number 1, the story just isn't memorable enough. That could be the overarching institutional story. It could be the subject specific story for each of your subjects. But you know what it's like. I do know what it's like trying to develop a story when you have so many different accounts, different egos, different approaches. It feels almost impossible. And even us as marketers, even though we know that simplicity is the key, we can often also get seduced into the feeling that, no, we'll just keep adding more to our proposition. The more we add to our market stall, surely something's going to stick. But of course, the opposite happens. And then what happens, even if you do develop a solid proposition, is you get good old proposition creep. So you might have it for 1 year, and then in year 2, you decide to reinvent the wheel. And it just hasn't had time to bed itself in, not only with the external market, but with your internal market too. One of the best examples I can give is Monash in Australia. They picked their Change It campaign quite some years ago. And although it's iterated now, they stuck with it for a number of years. And even the campaign now still is reminiscent of the Change It campaign. So find what your memorable story is and just repeat it and stick with it for a number of years. Remember, we are the storytellers and the story curators. So even though we might feel like we're operating in chaos, we can still choose which story we wish to create largely. I had a real life example of this where I worked at a university, some really strong points in the university, but we didn't have a crystal clear proposition. And it was 6 weeks before an open day, and I just thought, right, enough is enough. And we changed the proposition to one single message. I did all of the road shows across the institution. It didn't, it wasn't a raving success, but most people got on board with it. And I remember my team said, "Oh, we've created 6 banners, Penny, to communicate this proposition." And I remember saying, "No, we need 60. It needs to be everywhere. It needs to be absolutely clear when somebody comes to an open day that this is who we are." I barely slept a wink the night before the open day. I honestly thought I was going to be delivered my P45 because it felt like such a massive risk for me to take on behalf of the institution. But we did some tests at the end of the day, as you do. You do your survey. What 3 words come to mind when you think of this institution? And for the first time ever, we felt that our audience was repeating back to us who we were and who we wanted to be. Up until that point, those 3 words that our visitors picked were utterly random. And then, of course, we started to nuance that for our different stakeholders. So, number 1, back to basics, check if your story is memorable. Often when I work with marketing teams, they say, yeah, we've got our proposition, but when you do just a little bit of testing, you find out that that really isn't the case, even amongst the marketing teams. So number 2, other common mistake, you're just not on the radar. It's pretty well known now that if a student enters clearing or they go through self-release, they are more likely to go back to their original shortlist or long list than to seek out an unknown institution. It's a stressful situation, it's high pressure. They're not really going to start looking afresh at new institutions. So even if you haven't managed to get the application or the conversion during the traditional round, just the fact that you are on that radar in the first place is really crucial. So in terms of building your lead pool for 2025, you have to be on the radar and you have to collect as many leads as you can. But I'm going to add to that and say it's not just about being on the radar. It's got to be on the meaningful radar. Um, I've seen it all now. I've seen universities commission fancy media agencies who throw back a glowing report saying how many thousands of pounds have got them so many clicks and so many impressions and sentiment scores. But in our experience, in our professional experience, we know that leads generated via a human connection are the ones that will most likely convert. So those leads generated via outreach, via HE fair, via incoming student recruitment activity, they're worth more to you than a randomly generated lead. So there's got to be some sort of connection there, I think, for you to be revisited at shortlist stage, which leads me on to point number 3. If you have a strong pool of leads, but then you don't start a relationship with those leads, again, it's a bit of a wasted exercise. So we know that the best converting institutions out there are the ones that concentrate their resources and their budgets on pre-application relationships. If you think that your best communication should start after your students apply, here's a brutal truth. They've already been chatting, forming relationships with your competitors, and the likelihood is that you've hit that UCAS form because your institution is a filler. So unless you're trying to build meaningful relationships early in the cycle, and I mean now really for 2025, once you start building up a really strong pool from HE fairs, what are you going to do to build those connections instead of just having them sit in your CRM system? I remember we worked with an institution on a long-term project to help improve their lead pool. And they tripled their lead pool, and we were so delighted, and we said goodbye to them. But I had a check-in call with their CRM manager because we really care. And even if we do say goodbye, we need to know just to make sure we're doing a great job, that it's working. So I had a call with the CRM manager, and that CRM manager said, "Oh, Penny, just wanted to check all of those leads that we generated from HE fairs. Do you think I should invite them to our open day?" I think I pulled that face at the time and said, "Yes." Yes, but also what else have you been doing to nurture those leads in the time that we left you? And I think her face just kind of dropped because the truth was they hadn't. I think they thought that just generating the leads was going to be enough. A relationship is not a one-sided thing. It has to be a dialogue. So what are you doing to get that lead, but then create a relationship early in the cycle? Between now and June is your crucial period. And I know you might be thinking, our budgets aren't set up for that. Our budgets are set up for clearing. I think now is the time to try and reset what you're doing. So try and front load your budget and your resources for 2025 entry, and you may well find that your reliance on clearing becomes reduced as the years pass and as your CRM approach is finessed. Number 4, you're just not treasuring those precious leads. These leads cost a lot of money to acquire. It doesn't matter what institution you're at, they will have cost you some money, either in terms of staff time, agency time, just cold hard cash, event money. It's an expensive endeavor to get the lead in your CRM system. Actually, I would go so far as to say there are a lot of activities out there that are lead generating but don't currently generate the leads. So a good example is HE fairs. I don't think perhaps universities are diligent enough at collecting as many leads as possible. Yes, of course, that conversation is crucial, but so is the lead. And also outreach. If you're not collecting individual names and email addresses when you're doing outreach, you're missing a significant trick because your competitors are. And even more, if you're sending academics out there, which I do advise as long as it's strategic, they also do need to be briefed on how to collect those leads at the end of their session. If you can't bring yourself to do that, then they need to be accompanied by somebody who will collect the leads, because those leads will be super converting leads if the session was amazing enough. And to just walk out of that classroom to school or college and never know really if that intervention worked, then that's just a travesty. We need to prove what we're doing. So treasuring your precious leads means working CRM systems as they're intended. Most CRM systems in institutions are either cobbled together or poorly implemented. If you've seen any of my posts on LinkedIn, you'll know that this is a massive hobby horse of mine. I don't represent any CRM systems. I don't have any allegiance to a particular CRM system. So that's not me trying to sell you anything. I just know that customer relationship management and a customer relationship management system need to be properly planned and properly executed. It always seems like an insurmountable cost for universities, but I think if they traded off what that cost would mean to them in the long term, and it would pay back itself hundreds of times, but instead they always go for the easy, let's generate a quick lead and see what we can do. So I think using a CRM system properly has to be the key. And one of those keys is lead scoring. That's the beauty of a CRM system, that you don't have to treat all of your leads equally. And as I just said, all leads are not equal. Some of them will be more precious to you than others because, quite frankly, for some of your leads, you will have invested more time and effort, and that you're in a dialogue situation than for other leads. So what are you doing right now to heat score the leads in your CRM system? If you don't have a CRM system, I think putting that bid forward to get a competent CRM system has got to be crucial. And the reason I know that this isn't happening en masse is because one of the things I talk to clients about often, well, actually for our long-standing clients, we do offer this ourselves, which is short personalized videos to your offer holders to improve conversion. And believe me, it really works. However, when I tend to talk about this to non-clients and I say, have you tried this? They gasp. Say, Penny, we couldn't possibly. You just don't understand, they say. We have, let's give you an example. We have thousands of offer holders for nursing or hundreds of offer holders for teacher training, and we just don't have enough academic staff to do the videos. So no, I'm sorry, although you say it works, we couldn't possibly do it. That's because they're thinking they're going to have to do personalized videos for all of their offer holders, and that is because they haven't invested the time in working out which of their offer holders are their engaged connections. If you do a personalized video campaign, truly personalized video campaign with that subset of your offer holders that you know are your mind changer group or have the potential for mind changing, that is very, very manageable and very much mind changeable. There is so much potential here for conversion, but because the work hasn't been done to segment the inquirer pool and look at those prospects that have engaged and connected and with whom you formed a relationship, it just seems too big a task. Nothing is too big a task. It just requires a bit more strategy, I believe. There's a saying, well, I think in marketing, we were always about transactional, weren't we? We used to just, in HE marketing, just get that open day booking. It was very transactional. But then content marketing came along, and we talked about giving, give content until you get. But I think over the years of me having this business, I think I've changed that, my approach to content. And that is kind of give like you may never get. Just be really, really useful to your precious leads. And that's why I deliver these webinars every month. Of course, I hope one day we'll meet. And I hope one day you may commission us to deliver a project. But if you never do, then that's fine. I want to be useful. We want to provide useful content and to share our expertise. And that really has to be the approach with your precious leads. Now, I don't mean just do content marketing, jump on trends, just throw out as much stuff as you can via social media because you're just giving like you never want to get. No, I'm not saying that, because I am a strategic marketer, and if you can't prove ultimately how what you're doing contributes to the bottom line, give it some time, but you do have to be able to prove if what you're doing is working. And that's essential for two reasons. Number one, who wants to do a job when you don't ever really know if it's worked? Just for simple job satisfaction, I think it's important to prove how you contribute to your institution's bottom line. And secondly, let's be real. A colleague of mine said a phrase the other day, and it stuck with me. He said, "The sector is on fire." And budgets will be depleting and resources will be depleting. Do you really want to have a job that doesn't prove that you're needed? We all need to prove our worth. So yes, give like you don't need anything in return, but you do also need to check what is working and what isn't. Meaningful relationships, on the radar, and treasuring your precious leads. And once you start identifying who your precious leads are, you can spend more money on those leads. I'm a big fan of a little gift in the post. And finally, a final reason why you might not be attracting enough students. You're just not engaging your wider stakeholders enough. You're never going to have enough resource in your marketing team. You never are. Because if you're a good, solid marketing team, you will have ideas galore. You'll be thinking of new opportunities to test. You'll be entrepreneurial and want to stretch what you do. You'll want to get better at CRM. But you are limited by your resource envelope. However, you have potentially thousands of colleagues who can help you. I had a totally refreshing conversation last week with a vice chancellor of an institution. And they said to me they wanted me to run an away day with their senior leadership team because they understood that to achieve a culture of enrolment at their institution, it was a case that everybody would have to get on board, not just the marketing and student recruitment teams. What a lovely conversation that was, and how I wish I could have more of those conversations with vice chancellors and senior leaders at institutions, because that would unlock so much, wouldn't it, for all of us. Resources are thin and they are depleting. Yes, we need to be clever. Yes, we need to fight the gladiators that are battling us in our own department. But what have you done to spend time with your academic colleagues, your professional services colleagues, to equip them to help you in your student recruitment and marketing endeavours. It's all very well rolling our eyes when an academic colleague says, we need more leaflets, or we need a video, or whatever. We need an advert on the back of the bus because I was on a bus the other day and we weren't on the bus. I'm hoping you're familiar with those conversations. And, sometimes I remember I used to think, not again. But then reflecting back, what really did I do to set the parameters and to give them a toolkit to help themselves? All too often, if an academic colleague is seeing that their course is struggling, there is a very real danger that they will go rogue. And unless you've given them the toolkit and support, who can blame them? They're trying to fight for survival as much as we all are. They might think you're the gladiators in their contender tunnel. How do we stop that? I do believe this is time well invested. So if you suspect, for example, that for 2025, your open day subject sessions are not quite as compelling as they should be, if you have an inkling that they might not be consistently great, then I think it's too big an opportunity to miss. Incidentally, we do run training sessions for academics and they go down extremely well. Same for applicant day and offer holder sessions. But if you have a slight inkling that those sessions are not as perfect as they could be, why spend all of that money to get them in your institution to just lose the opportunity? Believe me, I have seen some anti-converting open day sessions. They were so bad, and we had the stats to prove it, that we would have done better had we not have invited people to the open day. I'm ashamed to say that, and we did something about it. But do you feel like you might be in that position, and what can you do to establish a usable toolkit for your wider stakeholders? So that's it. That's how to attract more students. I don't hope that all 5 are relevant to you, but perhaps one or 2 of those might get you thinking about, we could turn the dial a bit more on this. We could make our story more memorable. Yes, it's like wading through treacle, but I am now going to commit with my team to do something about this and curate a strong story. Are we on the meaningful radar? If you want to, you've got to start work now for 2025 entry. Front load your budget. Speak to your finance director about front loading some budget now, because that will set you on the right footing. If your budget for 2025 only comes to you in August, you might well be that filler choice on the UCAS form. Start your relationships early, relationships, connections, and dialogue, and start them now. Lead score your CRM system. It will pay dividends in the end. More time spent on looking at your lead pool and trying to segment them. You don't have to be extremely sophisticated here. Just a couple of ways, just 3 ways of lead scoring will make a difference. And then finally, engage your wider stakeholders. Although you wouldn't want to say this out loud, they are your sales team. They just need the support to make sure that they stick within the parameters, the loose parameters that you set. So they're your 5 things, and surely that's the end of the game. No. In many ways, the real friction starts as soon as that lead hits your CRM system. A student recruitment journey with friction will kill your conversion rate. This is a topic for another webinar, but there are still many, many own goals that we see being committed all the time. I've written a list here. I won't be able to get through the list, but awful course copy. Um, all of that money spent to get people to your website, and only to find that the course copy is lifted from a module descriptor from your student record system, or from years ago when the course was dreamt up by somebody who didn't know how to write copy. That really shouldn't be happening. Poor open day sessions, I've already mentioned, mismanagement of the interview process. I still hear of people turning up for interview and they're just sitting in the corridor waiting to be interviewed. Where is the interview razzmatazz? It has to be given as much effort and delight as you would get at an offer holder day. Um, Poorly articulated or non-existing subject propositions. Have you done the work with your hero subject to make sure that proposition is really crisp? Teams airing their dirty laundry at open days and at events. Have you done the work on your culture? I still believe that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker phrase. Have you done the work as an institution? That gauntlet, that gladiator gauntlet, is long and complicated, but please don't convince yourself that everything that's maybe happening in your institution is beyond your control. There are lots of things within our control that we could potentially change. Okay, so I'm going to check if we've got any questions, but in the meantime, I'm just going to pop this up, which is notice of our next webinar, Tuesday, the 19th of March. Whenever we do our PACE workshops, we talk about where do you get that useful content to establish the meaningful connections at the start of the relationship. And an obvious place is working with your student union. Getting great content about clubs and societies, or getting your SU to present really well at open days, to do some displays and, you know, to give a festival feel to your open days. And so often I hear that perhaps you've had a great start with your students' union, but it just kind of fell flat. I hear it all of the time. So I'd love to tackle this on the next webinar. And I'm pleased to say that Ian Payne, co-founder of the Crowd Agency, will be joining me. Ian's company has a major client base with many students' unions in universities. And he was also chief executive of a student union at a university. So I'm hoping he will give us some fresh insight into how we can engage more with our students' union and how we can build our content and our connections for student recruitment benefit. Okay, so I'm going to unmute my colleague Gemma, and hopefully she can share some questions. Are you there, Gemma?
Yes, I am. So we have a question in from Hannah. So do you have any views about how often prospects offer holders should be contacted? And is an email every 2 weeks okay or too much? And are emails even the best way to stay connected with prospects and offer holders?
Every 2 weeks sounds like a lot to me. And sometimes the danger of email alone is that it can just be send out stuff, broadcast, broadcast, broadcast. I think you've got to intersperse your emails with some events, useful content, webinars, that type of thing. But yeah, the constant nurturing is really important. Just try and make sure that you're segmenting as much as possible. And of course, the easiest way to segment is subject-specific content. But that's often lacking because of those limited relationships with your academic colleagues to get the gems out of them. I would suggest, if you haven't done this, to engage the services of a copywriter to interview your key academics, because then you'll have your ready-made subject content. And then when emails pop into your inbox, they feel really relevant to you. So if those emails every 2 weeks are totally relevant to each individual, and keep going. But I suspect they're probably not. I suspect they're mainly broadcast. Okay, any more, Gemma?
Yes. How do you suggest we rein in eager academic colleagues who don't trust marketing student recruitment? We have a number of academics that, even with a toolkit and guidance, think they know best.
Well, let me tell you a story. Well, many stories. I always feel really grateful when I'm commissioned by a university to come in and deliver workshops to their academics, because, of course, it feels like a high risk strategy, doesn't it? Asking somebody else to come in and deliver on your behalf. And I'll be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, when I'm faced with 60 academic colleagues in a room, most of them have their arms folded and are scowling at me. And I honestly do think a lot of them turn up intent on not enjoying it. Um, but I can tell you this, that usually by the end of the session, they're usually about 3 hours long, I usually get a big round of applause. Now, that's not me trying to show off. I think it's just that I think sometimes academic colleagues do think they know everything because they might have been there a long time. Of course, they deliver compelling lectures all of the time. So I think so it might be bringing in a consultant, but it all is all about relationships, isn't it? It's about building trust. And the more effort you spend with your key academics to break down those barriers and to just convince each other that you're on the same side will help. And then it has to be about proving, whenever they do something that you approve of or are within your toolkit, you have to make it a priority to prove to them if it worked or it didn't. Because then it shows that you really care about the time they've invested in what they did, especially if it's something that you've asked them to do. So absolutely get your data in line. Don't really ask an academic to do something unless you can prove at the end, even if it's 2 years away, you can prove back to them that the time and effort that they spent worked. It's got to be the only way. Okay, thanks, Gemma. Any others?
Yes. Do you think the role of social media is important in light of these points?
Um, yeah, I do. So I think yes, because social media is a great way of telling your institutional story, isn't it? Social media is there for storytelling. So as long as your social media hits your agreed narrative pillars 90% of the time, yes. And especially if you can get that social media lead into your CRM system. So if you can put lead magnets in there, that type of thing. What I often see though is social media, I think I've just said, jumping on trends. This is so on trend. Um, just randomness. That I think it ultimately it does have to hit a strategic imperative in the end. So yes, I love social media and I love storytelling, and probably don't see enough storytelling out there, especially at subject specific level, but always with a strategic goal in mind, I think. Gemma, any others?
For a truly personalised video campaign, what would you recommend the academics talk about?
Oh, well, this is easy because we do this with academics. So I've experimented all sorts of things. So I learned from my mistakes. I think if you're going to do 1 minute personalized videos, you concentrate on the offer holder stage. And as a pilot, you look at interviewing subjects. And you either use your videos to get people to come to the interview, because you might have a problem with people booking and not attending or just not booking. Or you might have decided that your biggest problem is that they attend the interview and then don't convert, in which case you focus your personalized videos on really quickly after that interview to reiterate the great things that that student said at interview, by preferably by the academic that interviewed them. It is pure gold, and it really works. But again, as I said, it phases people because they think you're talking thousands of videos. It doesn't have to be that way. Couple of caveats here, which I'll say really quickly. You have to be totally on it in terms of you know this yourselves, making sure you're not videoing and sending to somebody you've rejected or somebody who's declined you. You have to make sure your admissions lists are totally in tandem. You have to make sure you send reminders for people who haven't watched your videos. You have to really keep on it. You have to do your reports back to the academics so they know that because they stood with you all day to do this video, that it was worth it. And then that leads to my last point. You can't just leave them. When we deliver this as a service to our best clients, we stand with the academic all day and we coach them. And we say, look, that was a tad boring. Can we do this again? Can we inject a bit of pace? Don't be frightened. We do it in a really nice way, and usually people love us by the end because they feel like they've done something amazing at the end of the day. But yeah, you have to. It has to be in a controlled environment, and they do have to be personalised. Sometimes when I've worked with academics, they've said, "Oh, can I just do one video and you send it to everybody?" It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So great question to ever ask that one. Thank you. One more. I think we've got one more, Gemma, if we've got one.
Okay. So, how important is engagement with parents, guardians, and supporters of people considering higher education? And what is the best way to engage with them?
Yeah, I think it's one of these things we all know how important it is. We do, don't we, really? Because how many times have you, this is just me, been at an open day and you've closely followed people as they walk out of a subject session and you hear that conversation and you know that if the parent turns to their child and says, "Oh, I wish I could go to university again," you know that they're probably going to come. But if you follow them out of that session and you hear the parent say, "Are you really interested in this place?" You almost know that eventually that parent or influencer is probably going to influence in the end. And the same with teachers and careers advisors. That's potentially 20 years of advice that they're giving. So if we don't have a teacher CRM channel, it's 20 years of advice we could be molding and shaping. So yeah, I think the answer is very, very important. However, I know that resources are tight, and I think it's probably one of those uh, luxuries that if you can afford the time and a person to focus on parents, advisors, influencers, I think it's worth it for a year, maybe a 1 year fixed term contract to see what that does for your ultimate outcomes. Right, I'm going to have to stop there. I'm so sorry if you've still asked questions. Please do book an appointment with me. There are free 20-minute appointments if you think anything that I've said is useful to you. And please do book on our next webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it today. Next time we're talking about students' unions and how to get them truly engaged with HE marketing and student recruitment. Thank you so much for joining us today.